Om Sahana Vavadu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. So today I am going to give a brief summary of what all we discussed during the last few days. The Taittiriya Upanishad, its background. So I already mentioned earlier that this Taittiriya Upanishad is part of the Krishna Yajurveda. Altogether we have 4 Vedas, and these Vedas are supposed to have been just one single canonical literature, which was edited and classified by Vyasa into 4 branches. So each came to be known as a distinct Veda in later centuries. That is Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, the 4 Vedas. So Vyasa taught each of these Vedas to one of his 4 important disciples. So Rigveda was taught to Paila, a sage, and Yajurveda was taught to Vaishambhayana, and Samaveda was taught to Jaimini, and Atharva Veda was taught to Sumantu, his 4th disciple. Now this Taittiriya Upanishad belongs to the Yajurveda Parampara of Vaishambhayana. So this Yajurveda has 2 main versions. The one is Krishna Yajurveda, the other is Shukla Yajurveda. This particular text belongs to the Aranyaka portion of Krishna Yajurveda, Taittiriya Aranyakam it is called. It constitutes 3 chapters, 7th, 8th and 9th chapters, divided into 31 sections called anuvakas, or maybe lessons, anuvakas. So, these are 3 3 sections, 3 chapters, which is called Valli. So Siksha-Valli is the 7th, and Brahmananda-Valli is the 8th, and Bhrigu-Valli is the 9th chapter of the Taittiriya Aranyaka. Now, what are the fundamental topics discussed in these 3 chapters? That's what I'm going to give a brief summary of. Now, Siksha-Valli begins with a brief explanation of pronunciation. So, Siksham Vyakyasyamaha Varnaswaraha Matra Belam Samasanthanaka, etc. So, it begins with a detailed exposition. Then it gives a list of a detailed exposition of a number of upasanas. Upasanas are different types of meditation. That's the name Upasana. So Upasanas can be divided into 2 fundamental categories. One is called Vaidika Upasanas, which are discussed in the Siksha-Valli, like Samhita Upasanam, Vyakriti Upasanam, Omkara Upasana, Dahara Akasha Upasana, Dahara Upasana, and Brahma Upasana, which is called Pranava Upasana or Omkara Upasana. So all these different types of meditative practices are discussed in the Siksha-Valli. It's called Upasana. It's called Vaidika Upasana. Now, in contrast to this Vaidika Upasana, there is also the Laukika Upasana. See, in our temples or in personal life, we have different Ishtadevatas, deities, and we chant some bija mantras, and we do puja, archana, all this. Now, this is called Ahangriha Upasana. It's called Laukika Upasana, because eventually we visualize the deity as being present in all of us. Now, here in these traditional upasanas that individuals normally practice, which are not unrelated to the Vedas, but which are different from the traditional Vedic upasanas. So in these Laukika upasanas, we may chant the name of one deity, Shiva, Vishnu, and so on. We normally do. Here we are praying for something. We want to get bhakti at the highest. For the most sublime spiritual seeker, he or she may seek devotion, knowledge, wisdom from the Ishtadevata, from the deity. But normally people utter mantras, which literally are like prayers for wealth, long life, health, and so on. There is nothing wrong in it. But in this context, the worshipper, the one who does this worship, he doesn't necessarily undergo a complete spiritual transformation. It could happen, but not always. For the highest exalted devoted person, every upasana, every worship is equally sublime. But for the in the Laukika upasanas, in which people normally go to a temple, may do a worship, archana, puja, uttering a mantra, praying for some fulfillment of some their needs and demands. Nothing wrong in it. Lord Krishna himself says, Artho Jijnasya Artharthi Jnani. So there are 4 levels of praying to God. There are 4 levels of devotion. Those who want something, nothing wrong. A sick man praying for health, nothing wrong. So Udara Sarva Evaidi, Lord Krishna himself says, these devotees are also exalted men and women, because instead of going elsewhere, they are coming to Lord, to God for praying. So there is nothing wrong in it. So this is one kind of upasanas. In the Taittiriya Upanishad Siksha-Valli, we are not dealing with those upasanas. The upasanas mentioned here are called Vaidika upasanas. In ancient times, long before, maybe some thousands of years before the temples emerged, before the image worship emerged, these different types of Vaidika upasanas, Vedic meditative practices, were practiced by the ancient sages. So there, along with these meditative practices, the meditator, the one who practices meditation, also slowly evolved in his spiritual life. So a worshipper through meditative practice becomes identified with the entire creation. So what is there within me, the same divine reality is present everywhere as the all-pervading, omnipresent reality. So this what may be called Sarvatma Bhava, this total identification with all that exists, this universal spiritual realization, was the goal of these Vaidika upasanas. So this is mentioned in this at the beginning itself. So the first mantra that I discussed was this, the Shanti mantra. So I have already discussed the early part of the session, so I am not going into details. Shanno Amitrasam Varanaga Shanna Bhavatvaryama Shanna Vindro Brihaspadi Shanno Vishnu Rukramaha. So you find here prayers that addressed to Mitra, Varuna, Vishnu, Aryama, all these different deities who represent different natural phenomena. So this prayer is a prayer for one's well-being before taking up these meditative practices. So the total, Samkhita Upasana is the Pankta Upasana, then Onkara Upasana, Vyakruti Upasana, Brahma Upasana, Dehara Upasana. Again, so we are because we have to cover this fairly big text within a very short span of time, I didn't get time to go through all these details. So I am now going to give a summary of some of the important practical lessons that all of us can derive from these teachings. Those who have got the text can look at the 9th Anuvaka, 9th lesson in the Siksha-Valli. So there we already discussed, so it begins Ridam cha swadhyaya pravajane cha, satyam cha swadhyaya pravajane cha, tapas cha swadhyaya pravajane cha, etc. All these great values, Ridam is what, Ridam literally what it means is what is considered to be acceptable and authentic according to the ancient heritage of saints and sages as recorded in the great sacred scriptures. But its another meaning in Rigveda Samhita is Rhythm stands for an invisible harmonizing principle behind whole creation and behind our own life, is a sacred principle of interrelatedness, interharmony, interdependence, and mutual coherence. That's what Rhythm stands for. And Dharma is actually the way of life in which we do not violate this existing harmony of life. So I gave many examples. For instance, when we tell a lie, or when we do something that is against our own well-being or against the well-being of others, or when we actually violate the existing harmony and equilibrium that exists in nature. See, for example, if you dry up wells and rivers and ponds and lakes, or even if you construct a huge dam, which results in the concentration of a huge body of water on a small space, which can really upset the balance of the earth, which can create ecological disasters. Cutting down trees, which reduces rain, which leads to famine, death, and destruction, like that. So every act that we do which violates this inherent equilibrium and harmony of life and existence is the opposite of dharma, it is adharma. So when we conduct our life through word, through deed, through speech, or through even thought, in a way as not to violate, not to disturb the existing harmony, the inherent harmony, then we are practicing dharma. We can see this wonderful example in many ways in California. All the rivers are kept in a pristine purity. Trees are not burned. Of course, nature takes its toll. California fire, that's a different thing. But people are not allowed to cut down trees indiscriminately. So those rules actually, in a way, are conducive to the preservation of this rhythm through the practice of the principles of dharma. Then, along with this, there's one in Swadhyaya Pravachane. Swadhyaya means one's own study. Pravachana means imparting this wisdom to others. Both should go together, really speaking. And now, why this importance, this emphasis on preserving the ancient wisdom through Swadhyaya and Pravachana? What do we study? We study great ideas which come to us from eternity through this succession of great teachers and wise men and wise women who have contributed, who are to be thanked for whatever human civilization had already been able to preserve as its sacred heritage. So we must imbibe it and we must impart it to the next generation. So you went Swadhyaya and Pravachana. And then the next important lesson that they discussed was, that is a very important thing, that is a kind of a convocation address in which the very simple and very important signs of human conduct, behavior, according to time, according to circumstances. A kind of simple, common, spiritual common sense or wisdom as applied in our everyday life, in our growing up in homes, in the classroom where children study, where teachers teach, in the houses where we welcome strangers as guests, where we interact with our elders and our those who are younger to us, so that the whole lifestyle will be in perfect harmony with this existing rhythm or the good of the universe. So you find here some of the very important principles of smarta and srauta karmas. Smarta karmas and srauta karmas, these are two important things. Srauta karmas are those disciplines and behavior patterns that we normally practice according to the Vedic lineage, Vedic culture. Smarta karmas are normal human conduct. For example, some of the sacraments in the life, the institution of marriage, and bringing up children, giving them education, which upanayana and samavartana. Even two words are upanayana. See, you are taking the student towards the teacher or towards knowledge. And samavartana means the conclusion of the educational process. So how should one behave after education when one returns home to start his or her life as a normal member of the family or a citizen of this country or the member of the society? So it begins Vedam anuchya acharya andevasina manushasti. Satyam vada dharmam chara satyana paramadevi. We already discussed this. So I'm not going to those details, but there are a few things perhaps which we can add, which we perhaps we left out some, but I can just repeat what we perhaps did not deal with elaborately. Those who have got the text, you can see, after the initial instructions, the teacher continues his instruction to the student who has completed his education in the Vedic hermitage and is about to depart the school to his or her home to start life as mother, father, brother, sister, and playing different roles in society, in family, and the whole nation as a whole. So one should practice satya, dharma, speak the truth, should not deviate from truth, practice dharma, should not deviate from the path of dharma, then respect parents, guests and teachers as much as, this is a language of metaphor, figurative speech. You should respect parents as much as you honor gods and goddesses. That means Matu Devo Bhava, Pitu Devo Bhava. Let your mother and father be Deva, means celestial beings to you. I mean the same honor and reverence you should give to them. So also guests are to be treated with respect, and also the teacher. That is very important in the Vedic scheme of education. After that, Atha yedite karma vichikitsava vrutta vichikitsava syad. Suppose you have any doubt as to what to do and how to do, maybe in the community, in the company of strangers, in a new place, or in your own home, what you should do? Ye tatta brahmana samvarsinakha. There may be elders, there may be people whom you normally respect or may consider to be more advanced than you in education, wisdom and maturity, your uncle or your other maybe wise men in society, wise men and women in society. They should be consulted. So it's called Desha, Kala, Nimitta. Three important criteria. Desha means the place, the setting, our behavior in society, in social setting, our behavior when we are in a place surrounded by people who may be strangers, unfamiliar to us, our behavior should not be the same which will as the behavior we follow in our own sitting room in the house when we are surrounded by people who are our own near relatives. So there should be a difference as to human behavior in terms of the place and also the time. So kala means time, and also certain other factors which may change. Desha, kala, nimita, achara and vyavahara. So vyavahara means actual conduct, behavior. These are wonderful things which can be part of our syllabus, maybe part of a theme for any convocation address in any university or school, anywhere. Or even in the community settings, when we address students, the new generation, if these ideas are imparted, which they don't normally get from traditional schools, where they are taught to be physically big and strong and intellectually ready to question anything under the sun, as frequently, so that you can see that happening frequently. So, self-restrained in conduct, in the use of words, in the use of language, in our behavior with our own elders, and also in our behavior with total strangers, should be conducive to the welfare of all, which is in a way what constitutes this inherent harmony which we call rhythm. And then there are certain people, if you observe, you find they are dedicated to certain higher ideals. So they are the people who should be consulted. So when you have a doubt, that's why, atha yadide karma vichikitsava vrta vichikitsava syat. So yadi, vrta vichikitsava yadi syat, tatra sammarsinaka means samadarsinaka. Those who have contemplative, more self-restrained, they should be consulted on behavior, on what words to use, on how to conduct ourselves. So these are some of the important instructions which are very relevant in our everyday life, which actually constitutes for the welfare of society. Frequently, this is not very well understood. We often give importance to developmental skills and intellectual theories and doctrines. But frequently we do not pay equal attention to certain fundamental principles which should regulate our normal human conduct. So the Upanishad tells you, wherever you go, you find people who are more or less equal to us. And you find a few people who are more advanced than us in terms of maturity, of conduct and behavior. They should be consulted in improving or in regulating our conduct, behavior and speech. Because the Upanishads, in some of the commentators, not Shankaracharya, but in some other writings, especially the Smriti writings referring to this, they say, there are two worlds in which we live. The world that we create for ourselves and the world on which we don't have much of a control. So there are a few things that are within our control. If we try, our conduct, our behavior, the words we use in our conversation, the way we interact with others, the way we spend our time and energy, which are common to everyone, every person in the world has 24 hours. And more or less there is some kind of equanimity in terms of human skills. Of course, both sides you find there are those who are more advanced and also there are those who are slightly less advanced than us. But still, there is some degree of similarity. So, we can create our own world to some extent. But there is also one aspect of the world which is not within our control. But the convocation address is meant to help us in regulating and in making use of our own resources. Resources could be intellectual resources, physical resources, how we do things and how we speak and think and behave. All these constitute part of the world in which we live. The other part is perhaps created by others, but that world in which others are the main agents in the creation, which others create around us, also can be influenced to some extent by our behavior. So that's why these great instructions used to be given to students who have completed their education in the Vedic hermitages and who are about to return home to start their life in playing different roles. Remember, these lessons are not meant for monks or those who lived in hermitages. These lessons are specially meant to people, to youngsters who have finished their education and who are returning home and to start their life as householders, where they can be ideal householders and therefore ensure the lineage of their own family lineage, and they also bringing up ideal sons and daughters and next generation. So that is an important part of this Siksha-Valli. So you find in this section, the first chapter, there is not a continuous, coherent continuity of topics. That's why when I give classes, I did not follow the text from beginning to end, because you don't see that kind of continuity, because in ancient text, so sometimes diverse subjects, not always interconnected, are included in one chapter rather. So the second chapter, that is Brahmananda-Valli, it deals with the highest principles of Vedanta philosophy. So you can see from one to the other, it's a long distance. On the one hand, in this convocation address, the instructions, necessary instructions are given to students to grow up as ideal sons and daughters, and to be ideal parents, and to be ideal members of society, and how to pursue their goals in life, their ambitions and material ends in their life, without deviating from the path of dharma, and how to harmonize these four values, that is dharma, artha, kama and moksha. Dharma is the regulating ethical value. We should control and regulate our pursuit, our actions, our behavior in search of fulfilling our goals in life. That is artha, karma should be controlled and regulated by dharma, and then we will immediately, at the end of the evolution, we will realize the need to transcend all this and go to the higher purushartha, means value called moksha or spiritual attainment or liberation. In the second chapter, the first lesson itself introduces the most profound aspect of Vedanta philosophy. It is a definition of the highest spiritual truth, Brahman or Atman. I already mentioned earlier that Vedanta tells you that the truth, the highest reality, cannot be defined in words, can only be approximately referred to using, and that's why the entire Vedic literature is only an approximation. It is not truth itself, but it is an attempt to explain what can only be experienced. So this is the text. Om Brahmavida apnodi param tadeshabhyukta satyam jnanam anandam brahma. This is the word. Yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman. This is the text that contains the description, Surupa Lakshana of Brahman. So the text tells you that Brahmavid, the knower of Brahman, the one who realizes Brahman. The word knower here doesn't mean somebody knowing something. So it means there is a difference between the knower and what is known. What it means here, the one who realizes Brahman realizes that he or she is the same as Brahman, which is realized. Because eventually what we realize is that what we are looking for is non-different from our own true identity, that is Atman or Brahman. Now, you may have heard the satyam, jnanam, anantam, Brahma, this mentioned here. So it should be more properly put satyam Brahma, jnanam Brahma, anantam Brahma. Satyam stands for what is true. The totality of the absolute existence is implied by the word satyam. It is Brahman. Then jnanam, knowledge, awareness, consciousness, absolute is Brahman. So jnanam Brahma, and anantam, the infinite, is Brahman, or infinitude is Brahman. This is one of the most profound teachings of the entire Vedic literature. Not only this small Upanishad, but the whole four Vedas. This is one of the most important and celebrated passages. So what it means, I already explained, but I would like to summarize again. So satyam means sat, the existence. That is the origin, the whole of the whole universe. From this existence, from this Brahman, the entire universe, the whole creation emerges. So then why the word jnanam is added? So the great Bhashyakara Shankaracharya has elaborately described. If you define the absolute reality as the essential final cause of the universe, then you would assume that this fundamental reality, Brahman, is the cause and the universe is the effect. Like the seed is the cause, the tree or the plant is the effect. So there is a cause-effect relationship which stands for Karana Karya Sambandha relationship. Now, what does it mean? If the whole universe emerges out of Brahman, then that Brahman may not be conscious, because it is Karana from which something comes. And the fundamental Karana, according to Indian philosophy, Prakriti, it is a cause of everything. So from seed, the tree comes. So in order to avoid that misinterpretation, it is said that this satyam, this existence, is awareness, consciousness itself. And it is knowledge itself. That is the meaning. Jnana means knowledge. Now if you use the word knowledge, it can have a very, very gross interpretation. We come to know of certain events, certain places, certain persons, certain things which are known, and we are the knower. So there is always a distinction, a difference between the knower, the one who knows, and what is known. Jnata is the one who knows, and jneyam is what is known. So jnata and jneya distinction will be there whenever we use the word knowledge, jnanam about something. It is not that kind of jnanam. Rather, when you talk about knowledge, you may know of many things, many subjects, many persons, many events, many places. So there is diversity, there is division in that kind of knowledge. So one may assume that all this knowledge together constitute Brahman. It'd be wrong. Remember, these arguments are relevant only when you argue with somebody who, your Brahman is knower. What is so great about it? Knower is Brahman. So, but still, when you study the Taittiriya Upanishad, it is a great sacrilege to ancient rishis, a great act of omission to our sacred tradition, not to study in detail this particular portion of the Taittiriya text. That's why I'm trying to give a slightly elaborate interpretation. So, knowledge which is not divided, that alone can be Brahman. So, in order to imply that, the Upanishad continues to say anantam. Anantam means infinite, undivided. Niravayavi means that which doesn't have parts, which is whole, complete. So knowledge, the essence of all that we know, the truth behind all that we know, and the real cause of everything that exists, that is Brahman. This is the approximation. The highest approximation of Brahman from its own standpoint is called Swarupa Lakshana. To understand its relevance, you should study the concepts of creation and the different ideas of Godhead in non-Advaitic traditions of Hinduism and also Abrahamic religions, where God is perceived and interpreted to be somebody who creates this world and sits outside, watching carefully, observing carefully, whether you are doing the right thing or the wrong thing, and keeping the hellfire burning, and also a permission to enter heaven ready in his hand. So, to understand the profoundness of the Vedantic concept of the highest reality, to appreciate, we must have an idea of what non-Advaitic traditions of Hinduism, like Vaishnava, Shakta, Shaiva, or Madhva, Ramanuja, etc., they have to say about the highest concept of Godhead and Abrahamic traditions. Because here, the highest reality of God, highest concept of God is interpreted to be one all-pervading, supreme divine principle present everywhere, present in us also. So, when we live our life according to these great ethical and moral ideas we already outlined, when we conduct our life with a sense of sanctity and sacredness and without any selfish motive, we can convert every act of ours into an act of worship, every word we speak into a sacred mantra, every thought can become a sacred meditation, every movement can become a pilgrimage towards this highest goal. Because in order to realize that God is Brahman, we are not going in search of somebody or something. We don't have to consider any other religion as wrong. Every path is right, but in its own way. You see, if you talk about education, at one end we have kindergarten children. They would feel insulted if you tell them they are only beginners, because they think that what they study in the kindergarten is the end of education. At least that kind of confidence is necessary for them to study well in kindergarten. When you do something, you should think that that's the best. Then only when you do it as if it is the best, then only you will realize there is something still better. But when you reach the university, you do not consider you do not consider what you studied in the primary school as insignificant, as being of no value. It is also important. Nothing wrong in it. It's growing and evolving. So this is the universalism, what is called the Sarvatma Bhavam of the Vedantic principle. Now, after this, the next topic that we discussed was something that I think yesterday we discussed this, that is abhaya pradishtha, that we discussed yesterday. So in brief, I will outline. Then we go to the Bhrigu-Valli, because this also comes in the Brahmananda-Valli. So after that we go to Bhrigu-Valli. So asadvaidam agra asit tato vaisadajayada tadatmanam swayam aguruda tasmat tasugrutam uchyata iti, etc. This comes like that. So the first part of this particular anuvaka deals with the central principle, which I'm not going to discuss in detail, which we already discussed yesterday. That is, before the emergence of this world of names and forms and pluralities, diversity, it was in the form of a non-differentiated state. It was in a non-differentiated or undifferentiated state called avyakrita rupa that we discussed. From that stage, this world of plurality came into existence. Now, the next one is Idahi Vaisha Edasmin Adrishe Anatme Anirupte Anilayane Abhayam Pradishtam Vindade Adasaha Abhayam Gato Bhavati. This is important, this is relevant. Now, when you realize this truth, when you realize your true spiritual identity, what happens when you realize that you are actually this all-pervading, immanent spiritual truth? It is the seventh anuvaga, seventh lesson, if you have got the English book, which I don't have with me. So, if you realize this, that in our spiritual life, we are not going in search of something or somebody outside of ourselves. We are actually turning the inquiry inward. And finally we realize that we are something much more than these changing bodies and mind, a body which may fall sick, which can cause cancer and die and disappear. When the body is pushed through the tube, everything comes to an end. No, Vedanta says no. Mind also is happy now, unhappy next moment. So the mind also is not the absolute reality, nor the intellect. But there is something much more profound, which is really immortal and everlasting. It is the transcendental reality, which is behind and beyond body, mind and intellect. That is Atman. And when you realize this, what happens, it's just like you feel a great joy. So you find all the Swami's names are Ananda. So that's why. So every monk is supposed to be moving towards this goal, Ananda. What is Ananda? There are two types of approaching the subject according to Bhasha. One is Anandamaya and Ananda-svarupta. Anandamaya, Mayat Pratyaya means it is full of a huge quantity, is full of bliss. But that's not the highest. When you say, when you define this experience of Brahman as of the nature of Ananda, it is Ananda-svarupta, it's Swarupa itself. Its own true nature itself is Ananda, bliss. Then that's the highest definition. If you say this man is happy, very happy, Anandamaya, it means he has a lot of happiness. But it is not the highest level. But suppose you say he is of the nature of happiness, means he cannot have a form, he cannot be without happiness. Happiness becomes his surupa, his true nature. So, when this experience is reached, which is called yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha, when a person realizes his own spiritual identity, his own spiritual surupa or spiritual nature, the first thing that comes to you is a kind of joy. Well, suppose a man is under the impression, is under the delusion that he is a pauper, he doesn't have anything, so he may have to sit somewhere and ask for people's help. But suddenly he realizes that actually he has $1 billion in the bank. Then he will not be miserable anymore. But till then he was thinking under the wrong impression, that he doesn't have $1 to call his own. So he felt miserable, poor and wretched. But suddenly he realizes actually he is an inheritor to a distant uncle who had left him $3 trillion, let us say. There will be no end of his joy. So that's what really happens in spiritual life. So this inherent joyfulness is the first characteristic of every devotee. In the Bhagavad Gita, for example, the 12th chapter, it's called Bhakti Yoga. Lord Krishna gives a list of the essential characteristics of an ideal devotee. Santushta satatam yogi yatatma dridhanischayaka. This is how that description begins. My highest devotee is santushta. Some means samyak tushta. So upasarga means comprehensive. He is in a very, very comprehensive manner. And tushti actually means inner contentment. When the upasarga is added, it becomes very profound, very comprehensive. So a devotee of God should be happy, or he is not a devotee of God. If you say, I am a devotee of God, and crying and weeping, not for God's vision, but complaining and bitter and skeptical and full of doubts and never happy, and you say you are a devotee of God, it's an insult to God. It's not a good publicity to God. I am a devotee of God and I am always wretched and complaining and skeptical and bitter. No. It's an insult to God. God will consider such a person as an insult to him. It's not a compliment. So that's why Lord Krishna says an ideal devotee should be santushtaka, the first qualification and the first characteristic. Sadadam santushtaka and sadadam yogi and sadadam yatatma and sadadam dridhanischayaka. Sadadam means all the time. He should be always contented, a profound sense of inner contentment. It is not satisfaction. When a person feels that kind of joy, then of course he has to live in this world. He may face problems, he may lose his job and he may get back his job from some other day. He may lose money in the stock markets. Again, he may gain money. He may have to go through all these problems. But in the midst of all this, he will be remembering, well, I have something much more profound. And this conviction need not necessarily make him inactive or insensitive or utopian in his own dealing with problems. He becomes very sensitive, very efficient. But if everything doesn't add up, or everything doesn't click, everything doesn't succeed, he is never a victim of bitterness or skepticism and doubt and misery and wretchedness. Why? Because he has got a glimpse of this Ananda. And when this Ananda, which is actually what you know, satyam, jnanam, anantam, Brahma. Anantam means infinite. Satyam means existence. Jnanam means the highest knowledge. when you realize this, that this is your nature, then Ananda, because is the first experience, inner bliss, because the Brahman is Ananda-svarupta. The one who realizes his own true spiritual identity also becomes endowed with this inner bliss. And when this inner bliss comes, you know what happens? Then no fear. I mentioned this yesterday. Actually, the mother of or the grandmother of all the problems that everyone faces in the world is fear. Worry is due to fear. Doubt is due to fear. Every kind of problem we face in life is somehow related to some kind of a feeling of incompleteness, imperfection within, which is called fear. Abhayam is fearlessness. So the yadahe vaisha edasmin adrishye anatme anirukte anilayene abhayam pradishtham vindade atha saha abhayam gato bhavati yadahe vaisha edasmin udaramantaram kurude atha tasya bhayam bhavati tattva bhayam vidusho amanyvanasya tadapyesha sloko bhavati, etc. So what happens? When this spiritual seeker realizes that his true nature is this transcendental, which may not be physically visible, so he is adrishya, it is not related to body, mind or intellect, so it is called anatmya, and is beyond definition, and it is not dependent upon anything. When he or she realizes his true identity as Brahman, then what happens? He becomes established in total and complete fearlessness, total and complete freedom from any kind of fear. Fear can, as I mean, anxiety, worry, a feeling of incompleteness, too much of concern about something, too much of worry, too much of botheration about something. All these doubts, all these will disappear. It doesn't mean that you become a moron or a stone, no. What happens is, such great spiritual persons who have a glimpse, in fact, one may imagine, realization is a fairly remote, distant goal. So it's no use to me. In fact, even intellectual understanding and constant remembering of this invisible spiritual dimension of our own personality will have a soothing effect, a healing effect on our mind and intellect. So, as Lord Krishna says, in the context of an ideal devotee, total freedom from dissatisfaction, he will be the first sign, santushta satatam. He will always be in a state of inner contentment, inner serene contentment. It is not contentment in the form of superficial satisfaction, because that's only one side of the coin. As I mentioned yesterday, that kind of satisfaction is only a temporary postponement of dissatisfaction. So that kind of happiness is only a temporary absence of unhappiness. So that's what happens in spiritual life. Somehow when we can connect our mind and ideas and link this mind to this higher hypothetical possibility, that is, we have something much that goes much beyond the body, mind and intellect, then what happens, the problems of the world become manageable. That is the important. That's why, so abhayam gato bhavati. The Upanishad says, atha saha abhayam gato bhavati. Then, not only that, then he says, abhayam pradishtham vindade. Then he gets established in a state of total freedom from any kind of worry, fear, anxiety or anything. So that ananda, that inner contentment is the first characteristic that strikes you when you meet a spiritual person. So Sri Ramakrishna was the happiest man in Calcutta during his time. All others, there were so many people around him, but he was always happy. And he was perhaps one of the poorest also. He didn't have a huge bank balance. He didn't have anything to call his own in terms of material achievements, but he was the happiest because he had become one with this Brahman, this Ananda-svarupta. So we will continue this summing up, the summary tomorrow, and then for the rest of maybe we may get half an hour more tomorrow. We may get more time for interaction and Q&A, question answers tomorrow. Thank you. Tomorrow will be the last lesson. Now you can ask questions in general about any subjects. Most welcome.
When you started,
Yeah.
you mentioned Ananda-Maya and Ananda-svarupta. You explained Ananda-svarupta, but Ananda-Maya.
Oh, yeah. So we should remember, one word is anantam, which means infinite. The other is ananda. It's a long vowel A. So in the definition of Brahman itself, satyam, jnanam, anantam, Brahma. Satyam Brahma, jnanam Brahma, anantam Brahma. Anantam here means no anta. Anta means end, limit. It means limit. So anantam means infinite. So in Sanskrit, so anyway, so these are different things. Ananta means infinite, beyond any limit. The other word I use is Ananda. Ananda is long vowel A. It means bliss. So, in fact, in this text, I already discussed this earlier. There is there's a whole section dealing with what is called Ananda Mimamsa. Different levels of this blissfulness, from the lowest, from the grossest unit of this bliss to the highest and most profound, the subtlest spiritual blissfulness. There is a whole range in an ascending order, a description. Now, what is the essential nature of this ananda, bliss? Total freedom from any kind of negativity. That's what we can use in modern language. Total freedom, any kind of negativity. So, that's why I gave the example. If a person has got $1 billion in the bank, he is fully aware of it. He will not be fighting with another person in the street for a nickel or a $1 bill. Oh, it's God, doesn't matter. Why? Because he knows he's the inheritor, he's the owner of something much bigger. Like that, when we feel, when we experience our identity with this infinite bliss, that is our own spiritual nature, then total freedom from any kind of bitterness, any kind of discontent will be the first implication. That's why Lord Krishna says, Sandushtaka Sadatam Yogi, my ideal devotee, in the list of the long list of characteristics of a spiritual person, a devotee, an ideal devotee, Lord Krishna says, he will be always in a state of inner serenity and contentment. Now, about this Ananda, there are two levels of this Ananda. The highest devotee, the most advanced spiritual seeker, for him, this bliss becomes his true nature. So it's called Ananda-svarupta. Swarupa means our own true nature. This is for the highest. At other levels, we will be Ananda-maya. Maya means, Maya Pratyaya indicates abundance, huge quantity. Prabhuda means huge quantity. Ananda-maya means he is full of joy. But this inner spiritual joy, but beyond that, there is this spiritual joy, this blissfulness becomes his true nature. So I gave this example of the great Paramahamsas who used to visit Dakshineshwar, the Avadhutas. For them the world did not exist. They're always in a state of joy. Another Paramahamsa came, I didn't mention yesterday. He was holding a mango plant in his hand. And he looked at the Ganga, looked at the stars. He was always dancing, smiling. Normal people will consider them crazy. But I can give the example, which really happened. There was one man living who used to stay in the side the side of a street in India. One Swami who is no more, he passed away. He mentioned this, and he was so unconventional. And he just sit there, and people villagers thought that he was crazy, maybe abnormal, because he was odd looking, but he was, and he was not dirty rags he was wearing. So normal people thought this man was crazy or mentally deranged, as would happen. But this Swami felt he's not a madman in the conventional sense, as people thought. But he never complained, and some people, villagers, they built up a thatch, some twigs on the side, the sides of the street. In India, it's possible. Here, the police will come and take it. In India, you find suddenly if somebody sits in a street corner, or maybe under a tree in a forest, people won't come and disturb him. If he meditates or reads a book, nobody will do that. Nobody will disturb him. Anyway, so some villagers came and brought some twigs, or maybe some asbestos or something, and built a small, tiny place where he can take shelter from the burning sun. Then this Swami knew the prominent psychiatrist of that medical college nearby, and he took this psychiatrist to him. And then he was a well-known psychiatrist. He's also passed away long back. This happened about 25-30 years back, maybe a little longer. Anyway, so this psychiatrist found out that there was, in his face, there was some kind of joy, or brilliance, some kind of serenity, which is not normally found in the facial expressions of people with any mental derangement. So there will be a dark shadow, something not very present in the faces of people with abnormality. Some twisted expression. It may be obsession, phobia, depression, take anything, melancholia, even this, whether it is a psychotic or neurotic problem, there will be some reflection, which is the opposite of this effulgence and the serenity that they found in this man's face. It is not possible if a person is deranged. So, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you find a Paramahamsa, a wandering man who had reached knowledge of Brahman, who a realized person, came, and he was totally unconventional in his behavior. So, but Sri Ramakrishna told Hridaya he is a Paramahamsa, he is a highest jnani. Well, I can only give one example from my limited understanding, that is again from Russian Orthodox Church. That is the story of the way of a pilgrim. When the pilgrim learned the Jesus prayer from the monk who took him to his own little small cell. I'm just referring to the way of a pilgrim. It's a magnificent book from Russian mystical tradition. When he learned this, his whole expression changed. He became totally detached to things of the world, and he felt, there's a long description of this. He became so he felt so much of compassion for everyone around him, and so much of inner jubilation, inner bliss, when he learned the Jesus prayer. That was his goal. I think I already explained, I need not repeat that incident. You can refer to The Way of a Pilgrim, the great famous Russian mystical classic, very small book, not a big book. And the Pilgrim continues his journey. There is a continuation, Mr. French translation into English. You find that. And in the Bhagavata Purana, you find Prahlada, a little boy. So, Nityotsavam Bhavatyesham Nityasri Nityamangalam. For a devotee of God, every day is an occasion for celebration. Every day is a holy occasion. So that gives you a glimpse of this great spiritual person. You may reach that goal through Vedanta or maybe through sincere devotion, Because devotional philosophy also, there is a state where you feel total identity with the ideal. It's called prapatti. It's called sharanagati. This level of spiritual blissfulness is also experienced by the great mystics and also by the great devotees in the devotional tradition. Yesterday I mentioned this, maybe day for yesterday, that because these devotees feel a kind of inner blissfulness when they take on this journey of spiritual life, they are able to continue and face all the persecutions. You can see the history of the great Christian mystics in medieval times. All of them received only post-mortem recognition. And most of them had to go through a lot of persecution, troubles and trials. They could withstand all these because they had a glimpse of that touched this ocean of inner bliss. So that inner bliss gives a feeling of abhayam, abhaya pradishtha. This particular section which I read out just now, recited, is called abhaya pradishtha. Being established in a state of fearlessness, total freedom from any kind of inadequacy, anxiety, worry, complaint, irritation, or fear of any kind. And the result is one gets a feeling of identification with this inner bliss. It's what really enabled these great mystics to withstand the terrible persecutions that they had to go through in their life. So Prahlada, for example, he was terribly persecuted by his own father for taking the name of Vishnu, God. And according to his father, Hiranyakasipu, his son was a wonderful man except that he was a devotee of God. That's the only complaint about him. And he wanted to cure him of that problem. And Prahlada was persecuted by his own father, but he could withstand all this by the help of God, and that's one thing. On the other hand, he didn't feel that it's much of a problem even when he was subjected to persecution by his own father, Hiranyakasipu. Sri Ramakrishna used to go to Samadhi even when somebody uttered the name of Prahlada. Sri Ramakrishna considered Prahlada as a supreme devotee. So that's all examples of the Ananda-svarupta ideal in devotional philosophy and also in Vedanta. You can find these examples in many traditions.
Nowadays, modern world, you cannot live without disturbing rhythm.
Yeah.
There is no way.
Yeah, that's true. But you may be eating food which they may have used bacteria. They may eat this not GMO free, not organic. So indirectly you are contributing to the problem of the world. That kind of interpretation is sometimes very risky. So if you stretch the imagination to the widest possibility, then we cannot live in the world. All that we can do directly, consciously, we should not do anything that disturbs that. That's
So
all.
if you're a farmer, you're already bending the curve, right?
Yeah.
Freedom.
Yeah, you walk in the street and you'll be killing insects and animals, and you spread the mosquito
Yeah.
that fire, and then mosquito, you are doing an injustice to mosquitoes. So if you interpret and stretch the interpretation to that extent, then
It's difficult
this,
to live.
yeah. So all that we can do is we should avoid consciously doing anything that upsets, that does harm to the harmony of life. That's all we can do.
I think that Ranakar has been paying the consequences for all this mosquitoes that he's been harming.
I cannot live in harmony with mosquitoes. I will paint them.
Now, what I mean to say, again, we should not take an extreme interpretation. We can avoid, as well as possible, we can avoid doing anything harmful deliberately to anybody or anything. That's all. Yeah. That itself is a big thing. Yeah.
So I think that I'm likely to be wrong about this, what I'm about to say. But I wonder if there isn't an esoteric, maybe almost an elitist aspect of Vedanta, that it demands and requires a certain evolution of mental, intellectual capacity, powers of attunement, powers of devotion that maybe not everybody has. And how do I get to the point where I can begin to grasp, what you say is what that promise that is spoken of. And then so that which is graspable is something that's enduring, is infinite, is Ananda. Compared to whatever my faculties are, which are only temporary. So if I grasp that infinite, feel this sense of fullness and of Ananda, well, so what happens to that? What happens to me? It seems to me that grasping is only temporary, right? Since our bodies are temporary, our minds are temporary. So if I grasp it up to this point in time, and I'm driving along and I'm engaged in a car accident, and I suffer some kind of head injury, which rearranges my mind, rearranges my consciousness, and whatever I've grasped up to this point, whatever I've attained, where is that?
But Vedanta tells you when you are born again, which is not unlikely, when you are born again, some of these great things you have grasped and understood now, which you may have forgotten due to any problem, that will not be lost. That will not be lost. So Vedanta, Yoga, Buddhism, and most of the religious traditions of Indian origin believe in the law of karma and reincarnation. So they are interrelated. So even the slightest effort to understand a great ideal or any kind of practice to realize it will generate a samskara, a set of tendencies, which also will be added to the constitution of your mind. There could be other unwelcome or unpleasant tendencies also, but these healthy tendencies also will be added to the constitution of our character and mind. When you are born again, these tendencies, healthy tendencies, also will be there. So we may feel a great attraction, we may feel at home in the company of people who speak these ideas. You may feel an attraction to read books on these higher subjects. It's all because sometime in the past you have imbibed and you have enriched your mind with these samskaras, which are helping you to connect with those ideas again in this life. So Vedanta never says that you are never too late and you don't lose anything. So that is the unique philosophy of many of these traditions. Yoga, Vedanta, Buddhism, all these systems believe in this law of karma, and law of karma cannot be explained without mentioning samskaras, which are the natural byproducts of different actions. So we won't be losing anything. Yeah.
Swamiji, if you're a samsari, can you, because you always have obligations and responsibilities,
Yeah.
can you and with a good spiritual discipline, you can get glimpses of the bliss. But is that enough to get the abhayam, or you have to become a sannyasi to have a longer, a better understanding of all the things that you learn?
Yeah, actually, when Sri Ramakrishna was living in Dakshinesha, some businessmen, merchants, came to meet him. And they actually used the word hum log samsari, Hindi dialect conversation. We are samsari. They were actually Mahabharata merchants from Calcutta who dominated the commercial operations even now. So they were very good people. They do their business, they do very well, and they also do a lot of work, a lot of charitable activities they engage in, and they help many of these spiritual organizations. So Sri Ramakrishna told them, you do your job of business or whatever it is. Once a while, go to a temple or to a holy person or to anybody who may be interested in discussing spiritual subjects, holy persons. That is enough for you. So Sri Ramakrishna's advice was always based on the type of people who came to receive instructions from him. Now, to experience this Ananda, one need not take to monasticism or sannyasa at all. It's never mentioned there. I mentioned this many times yesterday. Many of the great teachers of the Upanishadic times, Uddalaka was a retired householder, Ashwapati was king, Janaka was an emperor, Yajnavalkya was not actually a monk when he started his long discussion with Maitreyi. Later he took to sannyasa after he realized the truth with the sannyasa. So you find throughout the Upanishad, throughout the mythological works in Mahabharata, not dozens but scores or maybe hundreds of saints and sages you come across. All of them were not monks. So that's what we discussed, Vritam cha swadhyaya pravachane cha, all that we mentioned. See, prajanascha swadhyaya pravachane cha, prajadischa swadhyaya pravachane cha. They should do swadhyaya and pravachana, reading sacred books and teaching sacred books, at the same time ensuring the lineage of their family, playing different roles of parents and grandparents and so on. So, by practicing that dharma, they will have a blissful experience. And this may evolve and become, you may advance in spiritual life over several life cycles. So we should not think of, let me have a quick method so that straight away I can have the Ananda-svarupta. That doesn't really work in life,
No, I understand, but as a samsari, you're always...
The samsari, if a samsari has got two meanings. One is, the literal meaning is somebody who lives in samsara. The conventional meaning in conversation, English, Hindi conversation, is a worldly minded person. That is what samsari, the word samsari could imply in normal conversational language. But its literal meaning, etymological meaning, somebody who lives the samsara, who carries on duties and responsibilities of living in this world. So if you are talking from the earlier perspective, that means if you are talking somebody who lives in the world can always have this blissful experience by doing duties and responsibilities. I give the example of the housewife. the conversation between the housewife and ascetic from Mahabharata, Vyadha Gita. I think I discussed this yesterday, day before yesterday. So an ascetic found it was necessary for him to take some lessons from a simple-hearted housewife who spent her time in doing her duty with a sense of sanctity and sacredness and responsibility. That context, established dharma, actually helped her to acquire this inner wisdom. You can find this happening in some families with grandmothers who may not have much learning as such, but through sincere contact and lifestyle, they acquire a strange kind of inner wisdom. It's called a spiritual common sense, an ability to see into things, and a kind of spiritual insight. It doesn't necessarily require for somebody to take to mendicancy or anything. The practice of dharma in daily life for an householder is enough gradually to take him or her to the highest spiritual experience. Yeah.
So my question is related but not the same. It is not so much about the lifestyle, it is more about an inner state of the mind. If one thoroughly introspects, at least in my case, I find that devotion to Sri Ramakrishna is not the only thing that is there. There are other desires for name, fame, etc. And this is where the lack of Ananda comes, or the inability to connect with the inner Ananda. So Sri Ramakrishna says that one has to go through experiences. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he says that. And to your earlier comment about we should not expect a quick emancipation, that is a bit of a scary statement, because on the one hand we have the so-called Avatara Varishtaya, a doctor of this worldliness,
Yeah.
beyond par, and how can we reconcile with
Yeah.
that? How does this guru
Yeah. Yeah.
accelerate this?
Yeah. So the effect of spiritual teachings that we read or that we receive from any teacher will depend upon the recipient and also the teacher. If the recipient is very sincere, then he will or she will immediately grasp the meaning. So I can again explain this in the light of the biblical parable, the sower of the seed. It's the condition of the soil that decides the fate of the seed that falls in that soil, actually. The sower of the seed has less control over the destiny of the seed than the soil. So here, in Vedantic perspective, there is a harmony between our effort and also God's grace. Our own sincere effort, dedicated effort, will make us fit for more for receiving God's grace more readily. God's grace works, but its work also depends upon our fitness. See, those who lived with Sri Ramakrishna and Dakshinesha, all of them did not become so advanced, actually, really speaking. The priests who lived in the temple, I have a man like Hazara. Of course, they certainly received some grace, no doubt, they evolved, but they did not reach the highest point. So, there is a harmony between our effort and what we receive from an incarnation like Sri Ramakrishna or any teacher. There will be always some result, but we all may not get the highest result immediately. That's because of the difference in readiness and fitness, as well as adhikarita. I mean, the condition of the soil is very, very important. Our own efforts will make the soil more ready, more prepared to welcome the seeds which are falling on the soil. I'm again talking in the language of the sower of the seed. So there is a harmony between Purusha Prayatna, human effort, and God's grace and Kripa. God's grace itself doesn't solve all the problem. You can find this happening in the lives of the incarnations like Lord Krishna. See, Lord Krishna, people, his own race, Yadavas, among whom he was born, they became arrogant because a great man was born in their community. They became arrogant and very powerful. So when they became arrogant, they faced a serious problem. I'm not going to the details, the curse of the sages, etc. No, then they came, then Uddhava, one of great devotees of Lord Krishna, came to him. Whole community is going to perish and you are the one in that community. You are the best product of that community, Yadava race. Why don't you save them? Krishna said no. Krishna did not. He could have saved but did not do. The highest incarnation doesn't give you the highest realization on a platter, distributing everything. It doesn't do that. It is against the very law that God himself has established in this world. They do not radically change the existing order of things. No incarnation will do that. So, for example, a person like Swami Adbhutananda, a great sage, he was devoid of scholarship. He was not well versed in scriptures. But he was born with so much of devotion. His whole mind completely accepted in its wholeness whatever Sri Ramakrishna taught him. The willingness and the ability to receive instruction with that kind of readiness comes as a result of preparation of his own mind. So he may have done a lot of spiritual practices in his previous life. And he was born with a mind which was so pure. So just a few words of instruction from Sri Ramakrishna was enough. And immediately he reached the goal. So there is always, on the one hand, this preparation of the mind. The recipient should make ready himself. Again, suppose our mind is not always ready to fully accept Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, what we must do, we must try to do good things. So Vedanta and Yoga both, and Buddhism also, recommend a very unique technique in changing our own mind, in removing negativity from our mind. It says, deliberately engaging in good actions at a physical level can alter the structure and the constitution of our mind. Now, we have no control over what thoughts are going to emerge in our mind, but we have control over certain actions that we may do at the physical level. So physically engaging in good actions continuously will generate healthy food for the mind, healthy samskaras. And when we generate healthy samskaras, mind becomes more and more pure, more and more oriented towards spiritual ideas. And then the conflicts will gradually decrease. That's the first stage. It's in his philosophical term, it's called karma yoga. Any kind of good noble activity, if a person cannot do that without any selfish motive, do something good with a selfish motive. That is the beginning, that is the first stage for every spiritual seeker. No one can begin his or her spiritual journey by practicing unselfishness. Lord Krishna understood this. That's why na buddhivedam janiyet ajnanam karma sankina. Suppose there are people in the world, they cannot do things with a definite plan. They need a definite plan, a pep talk, motivation. Then only they can do things. Wonderful. But under the influence of motivation and pep talk, you do good things. And when once a person continues this practice, eventually he will be able to do good things without a particular motive, a purpose, or selfish purpose. That's the next stage of evolution. Immediately mind begins to change. So whatever we do, any good action, even with a selfish motive, if a person does good action, that will have a positive effect. Kindergarten, what you study in kindergarten is also part of your education, not only what you learn in university. So that's why if anyone can begin his or her spiritual journey at any stage. So this is a common misunderstanding. Well, Sri Ramakrishna avatar, Sri Ramakrishna incarnate, so he will solve all the problems. Actually, that view can have sometimes unpleasant interpretations, unless we are ready, we will not be able to fully understand Sri Ramakrishna's teaching. We will be able to understand only those aspects of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, as much of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings as our mind is ready and fit to receive and practice. If our recipient, if we have a big pot, you can fill that pot with water from the Ganga. If you got a tiny glass, then you can fill only glass full of water. But we can increase the size of our vessel by doing good actions, by engaging good thoughts, so that we will be able to imbibe more of the great teachings of the grace of Sri Ramakrishna by evolving to the next stage of evolution. So that's why, if I am not going to be a Buddha, then I am not going to do any spiritual practice. That is not possible. So I have to face such questions in San Francisco. If I tell them, well, you can be a Buddha, but maybe you have to wait a little, maybe a few extra life cycles. People are disappointed. Why? Immediately I want to be a Jesus and Buddha. Can you become an Einstein if you want to be? You have to be born again, and then you should go to a very good school, you have to start your work. You should be born with that kind of intensity of concentration. Can anyone become what he wants unless he is ready to become what he wants? See, Sri Ramakrishna himself gave one set of teachings to Vivekananda, encouraged him, made him ready for sannyasa, for renunciation of life. Sri Ramakrishna did not allow Yam to become a sannyasi. Yam had got another exalted position, the chronicler of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. And Swamiji himself later says, no, understand, it was reserved for you. So Yam was an equally great man, but he was kept in the position of an householder, and he played a great important role by becoming the chronicler of Sri Ramakrishna's instructions. Swamiji became the evangelist of Sri Ramakrishna. So you can find this happening. Okay. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Paramastu.